All right, so we started with a very high level, exciting, very deep technical keynote. Then we brought down the big companies, the NVIDIAs in the world, and then research as well. We brought it down to the product level, which seems very personal to all of us. Now we are bringing it down to technology trends, newcomers, startup companies, and investors. And every time as an entrepreneur, when I hear investors living in Silicon Valley, I get excited. All right, so with that, I would like to introduce the panel, or actually the moderator, Radhika. And with that, please go ahead and introduce the panel yourself, and the floor is yours. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Thomas. And such a pleasure to be here with all of you today. I'm Radhika Iyengar. I'm founding partner at Star Chain Ventures, venture studio here in Silicon Valley. I do, thanks. So we're a venture studio here in Silicon Valley, focused on an advanced technology full stack. And we're focused on some key sectors, including healthcare, fintech, and sustainability, among others. We're also venture operators. But I have the delight to share the stage with four absolutely phenomenal women who are in the venture space, as well as operator space. So I think I'll let each of you do your own introductions, but if you could throw out three things you want to have our audience know about you, just everybody can look up your illustrious bios separately, but I think, what do you want to share with everybody? So just take a little go around, and Shuchi, why don't you
Okay,
start?
all right. Well, thank you for having me, Thomas, and big shout out to Kai. So thanks for including me, Shuchi. And it's such an honor to be on a panel with you all. Big fan of all of your work. I am currently with an organization called ServiceNow, and I'm on their corporate venture side. So investing in product adjacent technologies. We can talk about it in more detail, but three things. I would say my career, I feel like, has been all over the place. So a very non-traditional. I started out as an operator and moved to the venture side. In between, I did some impact work. So I worked in the prison reform space. And then I moved to corporate venture. So I think it's possible for anyone to reinvent yourself along the way. And so I'll leave it there. But, yeah.
Fabulous. I'm Sheila Gulati. I run a firm called Tola Capital. I also was an operator. I was a developer, turned software-focused investment banker, turned operator at Microsoft. And I have a deep belief in investing in what you know, right? So having an expertise, taking that expertise and bringing that into an investing role. But I'm excited to talk about investing. I'm excited to talk about startups, and I'm excited to talk about how much change we're seeing from an AI perspective that is rewriting how society works. So I congratulate all of you for being here today and investing in yourselves to learn about these different topic areas, and frankly, for being here at the end of the day. We are very excited to fund all of your companies.
Yeah.
Woo!
Thank you. Sheila, will you fund mine too?
Yes, Julie.
Okay, so
Julie has an IPO coming up, so she's going to fund her own.
hi everybody. I'm Julie Choi. Thank you, Thomas and team, for bringing us together. I'm not an investor. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm the daughter of small business owners. Some people have said I'm the hardest worker they've ever met. And I'm really passionate about seeing, as many of us in this room who want to build companies, access capital and wise investors like those that are sitting here so that we can build unicorns together. Three things. Yeah, so I guess I'm an entrepreneur. I want to build unicorns, and I'm a mother. I have two beautiful sons that I'm raising with my husband, and that's probably my number one job. Thanks.
Can you give us 2-minute pitch?
Oh my God. I'm still working for someone else's company. So I'm not raising yet, but someday maybe.
Wait, are you going to be raising?
I mean, maybe
This is
someday.
the breaking news.
Yes.
Breaking news.
You heard it here.
Who knows someday, but right now, one thing at a time. I gotta help the biggest chip on the planet find its home in the public markets.
So I'm Mallun, and I have the strangest background, I think, of anyone. So I actually started out my career as an intellectual property attorney. And I was at a law firm. I was a clerk for a judge. I was a patent litigator before that. And I ended up becoming the chief IP counsel and VP of worldwide intellectual property at Cisco. So I was an operator in a big company in the legal department. And then from there started the first of a number of companies. The first was a nonprofit that was, in the very sexy area of women in patent law, that has, now expanded to many, many more, where I've first met some of you. And then, but also it's like what Sheila said, is you do what you know too. And so that was the first company, there was something called Patent Trolls back then. And we started a company that was patent risk reduction and insurance. And it was a, subscription-based recurring revenue basis, funded by various, top tier VCs. And so that's how I entered and left the practice of law, sold, and then started to be on the startup side, and then also helped start another organization called SaaStr, which is one of the world's largest, maybe it is the world's largest B2B community and venture fund all around SaaS and software. And back when we started it, it was, it's like a lemony. These things start their a little gathering you have as a happy hour, and then like maybe perhaps like this, and then it takes a life of its own. And back then everyone was like, well, what does SaaS even stand for? And then you would tell them and they'd be like, oh, and change the subject because it did not seem particularly sexy at the time either. And then fast forward to various iterations, I love working with founders and VCs, and started my own venture fund. About 5, almost 6 years ago, because I wanted to find a way to get more operators, people who had built and scaled up companies, but were not necessarily the founders, to be able to access venture while having a full-time day job, without having to figure out how to participate in it. And so that's what Operator Collective is. We're investing out of our second fund right now, and it's a labor of love, but luckily it also works well.
Great. So you can see we've all traveled many, many different roads to kind of get to where we are. And I think some of us are still finding our way to the next phase. So, I mean, life's a journey, right? So that's the exciting part. But I think that the great perspectives is that you can pretty much start anywhere and end up, and keeping your minds open and pursuing your passions, I think is really the key area. And I agree with Sheila, is pick something that you're really, really excited about. You wake up in the morning saying, this is what I'm excited about, because whatever you decide to do with it, whether you're on the operator side or the investment side or both, that's an area that just keeps going, and keeps you going in it. So really quickly, I wanted to share, I don't know how well you can see some of these graphs. I don't want to have too much time on this, but by and large, I'll just say that the state of venture capital is still very far from where we'd like it to be when it comes to investing in diversity, and particularly women. 80% plus of companies that are founded by men, largely white men, are the ones that get funded. And we've got about roughly 20% that have a female co-founder. The good news is, and the smaller numbers are female only. So there's like 3% for female only founded companies. Slightly better at 23% and rising for male and female co-founded companies. So I like that, because I'm all about balanced perspectives here. And then in terms of dollars that have gotten funding, obviously it went down a little bit from 2021. That was kind of a crazy year. And it is coming back slightly up higher. And some of these numbers are skewed by large deals that were funded, such as OpenAI and Anthropic, which did have female co-founders at the time. Some of those people have actually left. I think, yes, I was thinking specifically about her having resigned. One of the female co-founders of OpenAI just resigned yesterday. So, there's still work to be done. The other thing that I just wanted to say is, in terms of deal count, the first slide, you can see that, it separates out seed stage, which is really early stage and late stage. And you can see the rising numbers are really for late stage companies. So that's another interesting statistic, that a lot more dollars for female co-founded companies are really going into late stage deals. And then if you look at deal count percent to female only versus female male, again, we've got better numbers for female male co-founded companies than we do for female only. So, I mean, these numbers are not, anything to get really excited about. If anything, this is the internal optimist. There's lots of work to be done. And I think the great thing about having all of you women on stage here is to talk about what can be done and what is being done. So I think let's flip the conversation around to the optimist side of things and saying, what are we doing to fix things? What are we doing to change the paradigm? And I'll start off by just saying, if you look at the landscape, and you can talk either from operator perspective or investor perspective, or from some of your portfolio companies, where are you seeing the greatest number of deal activities? What are the things that you're excited about? Where are you seeing the opportunities? Let's start with Mallun.
In just so many different areas of opportunity. So you're talking about investing and founders and sort of the
Let's take
diversity
investment.
numbers. So
Where you
so
see
what's kind of interesting about this panel too is that so those are the general numbers, but when you look at the areas that we all invest in, which is enterprise, B2B, tech, the numbers are far, far lower than this, because this includes things like right. And in fact, it's a sort of unusual to have an entire panel where we're mostly focused in this area as well. So, but that's also encouraging because, I think you do have a different lens when the people who have the money are the ones, we all come to this world with our, and we go through this world with our own biases, right? We all have our own biases. And so, and there's pattern recognition that happens in venture. And so it's only natural that when you see someone who reminds you of someone who was successful in the past, who did something, you're like, well, of course, you give them the benefit of the doubt. And so I think I am encouraged by the fact that there are, folks like you guys who are out there who are doing it in technical spaces, who are doing it in the enterprise. And that does put a different lens on it. None of us up here just invest in female founders. Now, there was absolutely nothing wrong. And I think it's good that there are firms who are saying, hey, we're a female founded fund and we're only going to invest in female founders. That happens to not be our thesis. Our thesis here is, and I have the pleasure of knowing these women. And so I know that they're very similar, which is no, we invest in the best founders out there. And, whether they, regardless of gender. But what happens is, when you have a different lens, and so we have over 200 operator LPs who also invest in the fund, and then the fund decide what to invest in. And so they also give us access to their deal flow. Those 200 plus operator LPs, we focused on, great operators, and they also happen to be 90% women, 40% people of color. So when you open the aperture of the people who have access to the money, then you necessarily bring those biases, right? Those experiences to the people that you fund. So when you look at our portfolio, we have 45% of our companies have a female founder. And that's like 8x the average. And when you look at the enterprise space. But we don't sort for that. I mean, of course, yes, we do sort of look for, we might make sure that we're open to having opportunities there, but we're not saying, okay, we need to have this many female founders in our portfolio, so we're going to do that. And we also have 22% of our portfolio has an all female founding team, and 35% of our portfolio has a female CEO. And again, we're not trying to hit a number and things like that. And by the way, even if we were, I actually think that would be okay. It's just that we look for the best companies and the best opportunities. And you know what? When you have people who don't all look the same, you build stronger companies that way. So I'm incredibly optimistic, and I have so much respect for these women as well in terms of what have they built and created.
Awesome. Shuchi, you want to go, shall we mix it up?
Oh, no, Mallun, I think what you've created is pretty incredible. You've probably given women that didn't even know about investing an opportunity and a platform to invest. So it's about pattern recognition for sure. We tend to invest and support people that look like us. And that's why I think 80% investors are still men. And it's about 20%. So I also had an opportunity so that's definitely one way what we can measure, we can't change. And this is my second, I would say, corporate venture job. In the first one, which was with SAP, we also had some milestones that we wanted to achieve. So we had it very clearly defined in our mandate as well, that we will be intentional about supporting and female founders or people of color, or so we had a certain percentage that we had. But sometimes that can also be like, if I am a female founder, I then don't want to be put in this separate bucket of it's money coming from a bucket that's been allocated to people like myself. So I have so much going on against me already that I don't want to be put in that bucket. So how do we make it more mainstream? Introducing more, I would say, investors is one. And this morning, and also allies, I think is key. So finding people, supporters, who are going to speak on our behalf in rooms that we're not in is another key point. And I think that has worked for me. I'm very grateful for all of my male mentors. And I'm sure all of us have had some strong male mentors in our careers and lives. So it's a mix of both, I would say.
I'd say very well stated on both sides. So I'll change to focus on kind of areas of investment a little bit as you all think about and plot the companies that you're starting this evening. So something that we're very excited about, right? We look at AI and we think, okay, this is fundamentally shifting the entire way that the world works. Again, we're enterprise investors, we're enterprise people, so you're not going to hear a lot of consumer rhetoric on this stage. But as you think about that shift in the whole way that the world works, you get to reinvent how business happens, reinvent those processes. And we love this as people talk about, people started with AI talking a lot about co-pilots. How does X assist me to do Y job, right? And then we are all talking now about this pilot world, which is called the agentic world. How do those things come together? And if you take what the last panel was talking about saying, who's your end user? Who are you serving? It's not tech for tech's sake, right? We're actually sitting here to deliver something to an end user, to a business, and it's truly being reinvented all the way to the extent that, when you kind of think a little future forward, how do I leverage the many, many billions of dollars that are going to go into these platforms, right? These foundation models. There's so much movement happening at those layers, and you get to sit on top, and you either get to build foundation models, which is also a business, but you also get to leverage and use all of that innovation in your solutions, be there at the infrastructure layer, the application layer, right? So what do you get from that? What would you do with that? And one of the things we spend a lot of time talking about right now is like these new apps that are totally composable on the fly, and they're kind of disposable, right? The application was this center of gravity from an enterprise perspective. And it's like your SAP system sits on your balance sheet, right? That is an asset of the company. But what does this look like in this new era of saying, wow, this is happening in a real-time basis. I'm delivering value to this user, and this user actually wants to see it in a different way or has a different outcome that they're looking for. And we're working with corporate data and also non-deterministic learning systems, right? How do I really, really creatively invent to put those things together to do something very bold and very new? And one of the other things you'll hear, I think, from this group as well is, gosh, go build those generational companies, right? What does the ambition look like to take it to that next level of building where we come in and often we'll see a company, we'll say, oh, well, that's kind of a feature. We don't know if that's a company. What's a company? Like, what does a transition look like? What is your biggest, boldest area that requires deep and profound technical invention? And I think that we're all in this room capable of that. And we're also capable of saying, hey, how do we take our ambitions and continue to ramp them up as the world is giving us this tech opportunity that, again, the last panel said it, everyone's new to this. It's okay. It's fantastic to be new to this. We're all new to this. Great. That's a wonderful thing. Well, how do we reinvent? How do we rethink the way the world works?
Awesome. Julie.
Okay, so maybe I'll present the founder's perspective. So there's a couple things. So I've been very blessed to work with two unicorns, back to back. So prior to that, I spent mostly 20 years at big companies. And then in 2021, was it 2021? I can't even remember anymore. I joined my first startup, and then that one had an exit within 27 months. So we were Mosaic ML. So I was the first business leader. My background is developer marketing. I'm a marketer, I'm a storyteller, and my preferred audience is engineers. And my founder is like a very nerdy guy, engineer. And his name's Naveen, and he's a dear friend of mine. We had worked together I had worked for him at Intel for 4 years, right? Trying to tell the world more about like this deep chip thing that he was building. Naveen built the first category of AI accelerators. Exactly. And that's where Thomas and I first met, was at Intel. And so I was Intel's first AI marketer. You know, we did that for 4 years, and then Naveen ultimately is a startup guy. And so when he decided to start Mosaic, he called me, and I was actually taking a co-vacation. I was like homeschooling, you know, I was with my kids. And I'm like, I can't take your call right now because I gotta ski actually. And then he's like, well, are you not interested? And I said, no, I'd love to hear. So I would say like he's now had 2 acquisitions. What I learned from Naveen is just authenticity. Like I think it's very important as a deep tech founder that has like the potential to build $1 billion company. You need to be very authentic. You need to really believe in your idea more than anyone else. There has to be an irrational belief that you know what others don't. And that's an attribute from Naveen. Now, after we sold that company, I was again going to take a break, right? I was on vacation with my mother, and I had a call, and it's from Naveen. I had departed from Databricks. I'm like, what? I'm on vacation with my mother. No, you need to talk to this company, this company called Cerebras. And I'm like, Cerebras, that big chip company? The competitors of NVIDIA? That sounds like really foolish, you know? But because you ask, like, I'll take the call. So I took the call with the CEO of Cerebras, who's now my boss. And I actually, within 7 days, took the job. The job was, you know, CMO. And it's because I recognize, again, the authenticity of the founders. Like Andrew and Sean, they believed in this need for something called wafer scale engine, which is basically the largest chip ever made. And it was only made for AI. And so this like incredible belief in themselves. So I would say everybody in here has some kind of irrational belief. You know, I would cultivate that irrational belief. Don't.
Or just
Yeah.
get Julie on your team, which seems to be
Yeah.
to building a unicorn.
Oh, I'm happy to help. I'm happy
Other way
to
to
help, but
Look
just
at it.
this irrational authenticity, it seems to be a hallmark of unicorns.
Just one quick follow-up, a comment on that. I think if you have an opportunity, majority of my career has been as an operator, mostly with startups, and you learn so much. So I think I am at the core, at the end of it, a problem solver. So that's what you learn. And then you hustle, and you're looking for is to solve, find a solution, and no matter where you are, what you're doing, you'll be able to be successful. So
I think I'll just say this. I think there's so many pathways into finding yourself as a founder of a company. And one is, I think, that belief in doing something different. There's a challenge that's out there that you want to solve. Authenticity in terms of being yourself always. And I think that authenticity, finding something you're really passionate about and concentrating on that as being that you're driving north, if you will. I think that's really half the battle, or most of the battle. The rest of it is navigating, and then I'll quote Thomas, it's surrounding yourself with the brightest and best around you. Because I think when we talk from the investment side, the numbers don't show it, but I think that the vast quantities of diverse people on this planet who can think of really innovative, creative ways to solve problems everywhere, whether it's your backyard or globally. You know, you can create that team for yourself, that winning team and that authentic team and that very, very passionate, irrationally passionate team, like Julie was saying, and go out and do it. So I think that's the optimism in all of this. There's a lot of opportunity out there. There's certain sectors, I'll just put a spotlight on healthcare. That's actually a bright spot when it comes to women being funded or women co-founded companies being funded. So those of you who are in healthcare or are interested in healthcare, that's an area where you'll see a lot of bright spots in terms of funding numbers. But the exciting thing is that we are all part of creating that better, brighter future. And I think that's why we're either operators or investors. We are all about creating that better future. Something is driving us to create a better solution out there. I'd like to shift a little bit in terms of what would you say if you had to forecast, since this is in the given time that we have, if you're looking at, and since this conference is looking at 2030, what are the things that you're most excited about as you look forward that are AI based or AI driven, that you say, wow, this is an area where I'd like to see a lot of growth? Because I think there's a lot of people who would want to hear your crystal ball.
Yeah, I'll just I've been thinking a lot about the applications because now with this big chip, what we're seeing is that we're helping machines actually learn like from one another. So with the speed of our processor, which is 100 times more power efficient than NVIDIA GPUs, 20 times faster. Sorry, did I mention I'm a marketer? What I'm saying is, yeah, please, everyone take orders. The point is we can help these AI models like talk to one another faster. Like they will learn from each other, just as the first generation, they learn from the data we fed them. And so, gosh, it's like, whoa, like it's insane because we were so into ChatGPT in 2023, just being able to get great responses from the model. And now we're at a place where these models are generating things, and it's just, I feel like we all just need to be a part of this. Like everybody should be studying AI, using AI, shaping AI. Okay? Everybody here is capable of being a part of this AI formation. We must in some way. I'm a storyteller. I don't code the models, but like the chips are there. So these AIs are going to just learn from each other. So we need to be a part of shaping. We need to be a part of OpenAI and go in there and ask, well, why did Mira leave? Right? And why are the 3 replacements all male? I mean, just,
That was the gauntlet.
I mean, like, if you guys are building these amazing, super intelligent models, like, just wondering, like, if if I'm represented in that process, you're just like wondering, you know? So I just feel like everybody here needs to work in AI. And if you don't know what that means, feel free to contact me. But by 2030, these models are going to be even smarter. So we all have to be a part of making it.
I look the, you can clap. I look forward to an abundant society. And let me talk about abundance maybe in 2 ways. I think abundance has a format today of like abundance of intelligence. And a lot of people that are successful and have worked really hard to go to a great university and do these things did so, and including myself, frankly, in an era of thinking about scarcity, right? What is that scarcity environment? What are the protected resources? What are these things? And actually taking our own mindsets and saying, gosh, what does completely abundant everywhere intelligence look like? What does completely abundant learning look like? And you know, from a venture perspective, we apply that to businesses, right? So what do fully reimagined businesses look like? Now, obviously, there's many sides to this question, also a lot of which are societal in nature. And so taking abundance and taking a society that we can all agree is not equitable enough on any measure and applying abundance to it is one of the most important questions we all have to be asking as we ask sort of great, people talk about the, hey, $1 trillion ex-employee company that's less people and really efficient and everyone's making all this money. Great. Let's also do that with education and health and, human services that we care about, because this abundance is here for us. And because it's moving so quickly and the societal shaping nature of it is so intense, we have to have all portions of society on a global basis, right? There's that great paper, The Ghost in the Machine Speaks English, right? We have to have all of societies participating in that. Otherwise, we will get a monoculture. And we will get what happened in a lot of formats with social media, which we all kind of say, well, that wasn't perfect, right? But we've seen the movie. Let's now do something different with this level of society shifting, which is much greater, much faster, much more intense. And 2030, my goodness, think about where we're going to be at that point from a model perspective and a capability perspective. And the number one thing I would try to leave you with is like, what would you do with that abundance? Personally, professionally, societally, the society of you, the society of your, kind of different sizes of that society. What does that look like for you? What's a good society of abundance?
Well put. I think, yeah, we can definitely reimagine a lot of things. And I think diverse perspectives absolutely have a very, very important role in in shaping, especially the role that AI will play in this abundance that Sheila, you're talking about. Mallun, did you want to jump in really quick? We're going to soon run out of time, so try to be brief. I want to leave a few minutes for Q&A as well. We're good? Okay, go ahead.
No.
Mallun?
Mallun,
Go
go
ahead. Mallun.
One of the things, so most of us, we invest primarily in enterprise B2B, in a lot of hardcore tech, and you're a healthcare investor. We do some healthcare tech as well. And it's, one of the things that you said is like, what's the shift? What's the opportunity? How can we take advantage of it? So when the funders are, so I'll just give you an example. When the funders are primarily one gender, you necessarily have that lens. And so there's a company that we invested in that deals with it's virtual health for women approaching menopause and perimenopause, which by the way, can start in your mid 30s, which is a little known fact. And so when we funded this company at the seed, they had just started to get started. They had no revenue yet. And they were having a hard time getting funded. And I had been looking actually for like 4 years in this space because Operator Collective, our operators are, most of us are over 40, 90% of us are women, 40% are people of color. All of the 90% are going to hit menopause one day. And so, so I was like, I feel like we need to do something about this and address it. But they couldn't get funded. Right at the beginning, they couldn't get funded because the people had looked at it, and a lot of the VCs who had funded some of the early menopause models had said like, oh, well, this is really just this is just like beauty and wellness. It's a product, right? It's a patch, it's a cream. It's going to like help your, it's a supplement. Yeah. 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 Those over 40 are laughing. The and the fact is they were crappy models. I mean, they were crappy business models, which is like, okay, because VCs love recurring revenue like business models. And so it's like, oh, great, you're going to scale skin cream, but you're going to charge a membership for this. And then you're going to charge them whatever. You're going to make all this money. I'm like, those are not sustainable. So when we invested in MIDI, I was like, this one is different. And so there was two things that were different about it. One, I was like, everyone was questioning, is menopause a big enough category? And yes, and whether it was a category at all, or whether it was a subset of like beauty. And so I was like, well, yes, I think it is, even though there was a lot of questions about that. And then second, it's also when I look to invest, when we all look to invest, it's like, what are the shifts that are happening in the world that make this an opportunity to drive some disruption? And there were some things that they did was really smart. It wasn't just like, oh, virtual healthcare for women, which of course that makes sense. But we have to look behind the business model, which was like, one, COVID shifted things that allowed you to be reimbursed by insurance for virtual visits at the same rate as in-person visits. That was not possible before COVID. So we saw that shift, a little bit of luck right in there too. Who could have predicted that happened, but they leaned into it. The fact that they did the hard work to make sure that this was covered by insurance, as opposed to, hey, you should pay me $100 per month just for a membership because some VC has said that's a good business model, right? So there's things like that where I'm incredibly optimistic about like what the future holds, what 2030 holds, which is, you know, I, you know, accessible healthcare, right, for women. That is not just focused on fertility, because a lot of it, most of it is focused on fertility and having babies, which is important, but a lot of us are not having babies anymore. And maybe aren't, you know, or maybe we'll never have them. Anyway, so looking for those shifts. And I think 2030 is going to be incredible, which is, can you create more abundance? Can you look at the things where, okay, instead of like, you know, saying, okay, there's only 700 OBGYNs who are even trained in menopause across the United States. Right. It's like, let's make that accessible to all, and think of how much that is going to allow us to be able to have this richer society, that we are able to focus on these things that otherwise I think are just incredibly hard to access right now.
Yeah, and quickly, just to add to that, I think both you and Sheila have, it's like, what problems are we going to solve in the next 6 years, like through AI? So we definitely need to be more intentional, and all of you definitely can play a key role in it. And to what our product leaders talked about, I think one of the things, startups or large enterprises, there's this sense of urgency to release products, right? So how do you make sure you're intentional? You are representative of the population that you're going to be serving at the end of the day. So how do you introduce that into the thoughtfulness, into releasing products, into what problems are you going to solve? So overall, I think it's introduced abundance of knowledge and time, I feel like, in my life already. So I can only imagine what the next 6 years is going to do. I'm positive and optimistic for sure.
This has been such an amazing discussion. Really, really insightful. And I think, you know, if I could just throw in the last takeaway on this is there's an abundance of gratitude, first of all, for this amazing panel that's had such an incredible, we've had such a great positive discussion. The hard work is still there. We've got to do so much. The numbers don't lie. So we're not there. We're far from there, in fact. But I think there's a lot of optimism around all of the many ways in which our diverse voices can add and contribute so much value into abundance creation over the next 6 years and beyond. And I think it's an imperative, because the world needs it, the planet needs it. We need all of our voices and all of our creativity and ingenuity at hand to think of different ways that we can actually succeed, all of us, and have this abundance that we're all talking about. So I want to leave a few moments open for audience Q&A.
Any hands?
I'll start here, Savita, next. We're trying to ask questions for the previous.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Faiza. I'm actually a student from San Francisco State University. And you're right, I was trying to ask this question, and I'm going to ask the same question for the panel. I know Radhika and Mallun kind of touched on healthcare and, you know, having AI being used in healthcare, and primarily someone who wants to do that for the future. I heard you all talk about Vision 2030 and how you would see the vision. And we primarily, whenever we talk about AI, we talk about tech and softwares and chips and all that. Where do you see healthcare and fintech going into this Vision 2030?
So much, right? There's so much, like, think about mental health workers, right? There's a shortage of them. I mean, like a lot of the doctors, you know, shortage of them. And there's so much paperwork that they have to do. There's so much data. There's so much, think about how you have to process insurance claims, all of that. I think, so we do look in a lot of that area with respect to AI and how can it drive efficiencies. And so even with MIDI, for instance, which is the company, at scratching the surface is, okay, they have an AI scribe. Like just think about after you have a doctor's visit or a mental health, visit, and they have to spend all the time entering all the paperwork. And it's not just the paperwork to like do some of the notes. It's like you also have to do the paperwork to make sure that you have the right codes so that you can bill things when you have referrals and stuff later. So there's so much opportunity within healthcare. This, MIDI happens to be one that is focused on providing the health, but they use a lot of AI within their own stack. And we've also invested in, companies that are making like, outcome-based care easier because you've got access to this database, and then you've got a scribe that has the ability to enter it into it. So good for you. Healthcare is so important, and there certainly is a shortage. And I think if we can make life easier for the healthcare providers, it's a very, very hard, lots of schooling to go into it. That would be a big service.
Yeah, physician and nurse burnout is top of mind so just that, and bringing more efficiency, productivity, and just being able to kind of digitize a lot of it and take the manual part out of it, I think indefinitely too. Yeah.
Thank you. Savita. Raise your hands. I'll be seeing who's next question.
Yeah, so I've been kind of dabbling in and out of startup world, both in Bangalore and here. One of the things I have noticed when women founders are starting companies, and one of my friends actually ventured into a security startup, so deep tech again. The challenge I find women founders experience, even if they're lucky, I think funding is one aspect, but the other aspect is really just building the team. Right? So you have to hire product managers, salespeople. Like if you're really looking at sort of long-term generational company, you need the team, you need the people. And what I think in any of us who want to start, we are struggling with, okay, even if we have the idea, finding your co-founder, the engineering co-founder, like even if you have the business, you can do all the sales, you still need an engineering co-founder. You need to hire like the next level of team. So building the whole company and growing it, finding the salespeople, that ecosystem. The other thing I found, that ecosystem doesn't exist. And it's not just the funding, but you need the other aspects too. And I want to understand your comments. The other thing I want to ask is also about like the negotiation on term sheets and all. So like, for example, my friend, this was her first startup. She wasn't so lucky to get the mentoring, and she lost out on, like, they pushed her out of the board. She didn't realize how critical that was to fight for her seat at the board level after she raised.
Does she have a
the
lawyer?
series. No, I don't think she had anybody advising her at all.
I mean, look, I think having great advisors is super important. So something like that, like when you're doing a term sheet negotiation, lawyers have a lot of volume on it. Have a lawyer that you trust and really like. And I think that that's a really important relationship. And I'd say in terms of finding co-founders and building teams, a lot of people will look for co-founders. A lot of people will have a co-founding team to start with. And then some people of all walks of life, including women, will start companies on their own. And that whole comment that, culture eats strategy every day of the week is super important to remember, especially as there's a lot of job portability. Some are remote, some are hybrid, some are in office, right? So there's all these culture questions that get asked at the beginning now as you create a company, as you create a business. But frankly, I think that there's a lot of people, there's a lot of talent attraction to working for diverse teams with great cultures. And so I don't think that in your example that women are sort of starting behind other people in terms of building an incredible organization or the capability to do that. And frankly, sometimes that can be a real positive for talent that's out there in the world. And so I think that it's, look, here's the reality. Startups are hard, right? Entrepreneurship is a super, super difficult journey, no matter who's on that journey. And so knowing that you want to be on that journey and then being super obsessed and, like really, really loving your scenario,
Exactly.
obviously bringing Julie onto your team, but then being in it for the, it's like you have a burning desire to do this and you're inventing with that burning desire. That that attracts people, that attracts talent, that attracts co-founders, that attracts money, that attracts all of it. And then yes, being smart, if you're going through something for the first time, fabulous. Find a friend that isn't. And if you're paying that friend and they're a lawyer, great. And if it's someone on this stage, great, right? But have the expertise around the table.
Yeah, for sure. Build your advisory board,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's important.
Yes,
Super
support
important.
is key. And also, I think one of the most underestimated skills for a founder is like you're constantly selling to someone, whether it's selling the value proposition to hire new people, your co-founder or whatever. So just honing in and making sure that that's something that you're mindful of, constantly working on, whether it's your pitch or your passion. I'm sure if you're or anyone starting a company, passion is a given to what everyone said. So, but yeah.
I think I'll just address the first question you had about your friend. And it's unfortunate that she had the experience that she did, because there are a lot of communities of women who do get that kind of informal mentoring and support. There are women's groups that are out there, founders groups, women founders groups. There's a lot that's available. So I think, you know, this journey, like Sheila was saying, it's just a really hard journey, and you have to have that burning passion. Nothing else will get you through, because it's the wildest roller coaster ride you've ever could dream of.
Yeah.
You go from the highest highs to the lowest lows in a flash of a second. So I think having that passion and that desire to do something is what propels you forward. But there are a lot of support groups that are available. There are a lot of communities you can access. So I think surrounding yourself with the right people, again, makes all the difference. And having the advisory board, that advisory board is an extension of your team. So bring in people who have the right base of experience, and it can be in many different areas, because company building is not just about engineering or marketing or two little things or three little things. It's a lot of layers of different things. And sometimes if you're solving things in a particular sector, like healthcare, for example, surround yourself with advisors who come from that sector, who know what it's like to build companies and to sell to companies in that space. So, you know, having the right people around you, super critical. So with that,
Yeah, maybe to add, maybe, maybe to add one comment to that, for the entrepreneurial DNA-minded people or younger generation in this room, do it for the right reason. Don't do it for the money. Do it for your vision, the passion, identify a problem, find
But
the
also
right
don't
team.
be afraid of
and-
making money.
No, of course, of course.
obsessed.
I'm not saying that.
Be obsessed with that.
Don't use it as your primary driver. That's all I'm saying. Okay, okay. I tend to,
If we want a great society, we also need rich women.
yeah.
When I started Operator Collective, this is not a public interest thing. This
Yeah.
is not a like women's dinner group, right?
No.
This was like, we are doing this because it's a great idea that's going to make a shitload of money, because founders are going to want us to
Exactly.
invest in them, and they're going to be lucky if
Yeah.
we are funding them.
Yeah.
And so it is about making money. And then but it is about but it is also like, you know, starting out, I think it is hard to start Cerebrus if you're a brand new graduate from, you know, undergrad. Like, yeah. And so the thing is, it's like, go work for big companies sometimes, right? And get the experience, or startups or some other companies, because you're going to learn so much. And then it gets to like what Sheila said, is like, then you face a problem that you see and you worked with on a daily basis, and you're like, I can fix this. And then that obsession happens. And you literally, to make it worthwhile to be a founder, and you know, many of us have been founders, you literally, I tell people, it's like, unless you are obsessed about this idea 24 hours a day, and you cannot let it go. And every time you're sitting there and everyone's like, where did you go? You're like, oh, no. Yeah. You know, it's like, you are there, and like, I can do this, and you're iterating, and you go to the gym and you're doing that. Otherwise, I don't know that you're going to want to put, you know, it just, that is what it takes to truly, it is very hard to be a founder. But sometimes you get those ideas where you're like, I am going to do this. And someone may be like, oh, that's a terrible idea. You couldn't do this. It's 10 million people told me why Operator Collective was a bad idea when I started it. It's like, well, you're never going to do this. You're never going to do this. I call it the you never gonnas. And I got a lot of those, but it's like, you know what? I'm going to figure it out. And by the way, one other like closing point on that is, for the you never gonnas, you actually don't want to ignore them. You actually want to hear what they're saying. because the fact that someone is giving you feedback is actually a privilege, and the fact that they're putting themselves out there as opposed to saying like, oh yeah, it's a great idea. So they would say these things and I'm like, okay, if they have that thought, other people will too. And it's not a bad point. There's a good point in there somewhere. And so how am I going to make my business model stronger because I know that other people will have this, and there is a good point in there. And so anyway, but I wholeheartedly agree. The obsession, right? It's okay to make money. But frankly, doing a startup to make money is a terrible idea because that's not going to drive you enough to have that obsession, and startups are really risky. Chances are it's going to fail, and
Yeah.
unless Julie works for you.
I want to go on vacation.
She gets the
Yeah,
best
and-
deals
and
on
just to
vacation.
add, I think sit with yourself and like, what is the reason that you want to do it?
Can I
right?
go home? I go home.
Sorry, I'm done. That's it.
No, this is great. I love it.
Yeah.
I think everybody in this room can feel the passion from this particular group and the spark, which is great, which is really great. I appreciate that.